Meet your new go-to for a fresh and inclusive approach to health.
Wellness Rebranded is the pod where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist combine perspectives to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and your feelings.
Whether we're serving up juicy stories, breaking down the latest research, or dropping practical tips, we'll leave you informed, inspired, and ready to take health-promoting action.
We get you because we are you.
We've joined forces because we know that health isn't one-dimensional, and neither are you.
Tune in for real talk that cuts through the wellness and diet culture hype. Stay for the laughs, the insights, and the feel-good vibes.
We're diving into a conversation about mental health in high-pressure jobs. Sometimes burnout is often brushed off or even normalized. Whether or not it's part of your workplace culture, taking care of your mental well-being is essential. We have an amazing guest today. Her name is Tanner Greenwalt, and she has 8 years of experience in the mortgage industry. She's helped countless home buyers navigating the loan process with ease. Her mission is simple: to make home financing stress-free, personalized, and enjoyable. She combines expert knowledge with a psychology-driven approach to understand her clients' needs, ensuring they feel confident every step of the way. And whether, they're a first-time buyer, or a seasoned homeowner, or a real estate professional, she's there to provide solutions, clear communication, and a smooth path to closing. I had the pleasure to meet Tanner last year, I believe, and we connected right away, and then we went for coffee, and I really enjoyed that conversation because it was a confirmation of how mental health is everywhere, right? Obviously, because it's part of us and it's what we have or sometimes don't have. But she made me think of how important it is also for women in high demanding jobs and high pressure jobs, especially jobs also surrounded mostly by men, because sometimes the culture is not about focusing on your well-being, but maybe there are other goals that actually are detrimental for your well-being, like how much money we need to make and all these goals we need to accomplish this month. So she accepted our invitation to come talk to us about anything we want to talk about today. So welcome, Tanner, and thank you so much for saying yes.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
So Tanner, I remember this conversation and how in your job, right, which is it's like twofolded the way I see it, is not only taking care of your own well-being because you're dealing with a lot of pressures in your job, but also the people that come to you are in high pressure already. So it's like two high pressures encountering each other.
It is.
How do you see well-being or wellness being part or not being part of what you do?
Honestly, it's a part of everything that we do, I feel. Again, you have to almost be well yourself to be well for your clients. Because I'm in an industry where I'm dealing with people's money, their finances. I mean, they're investing in something that's huge for them. So it means something to them. There's an emotion behind it. And I think sometimes people forget about that. So if I'm not emotionally stable, how can I give them the necessary, what they need to buy a house? I can't, I've had clients calling me sometimes in tears just because of the emotional stress behind purchasing a home. So you have to know how to navigate that when they call you. You can't just be like, oh my gosh, they're crying on the phone. What do I say? What do I do? How do I calm them down? You should already kind of have that in your toolbox, in my opinion. So it's very important to know almost how you can be the best version of yourself to be the best version for your clients, in my opinion.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting, ladies? Because we've talked about this, but we're in the wellness industry, right? So it's almost like a given that we talk about how to take care of ourselves first so we can provide for our clients. But it really applies to almost any profession, really. Hairdressers, how much they have to listen to when they're doing somebody's hair, and in this case, in Tanner's case, is in her line of work too.
I think it's just another example of how wellness seeps into everything, and that if you don't have your health, then everything else becomes more challenging. I think it's great that people like Tanner are bringing it to traditionally like non-wellness focused jobs.
We need to take care of ourselves so that we can show up in life in ways that are effective and also enjoy it.
100%.
It's the big thing. You can't really enjoy your job if you're not your best self.
How do you see, Tanner? Let's talk about burnout for a minute. What does burnout look like in your line of work? Like, what would you say to someone who thinks it's just part of the job? And even how does it look like burnout because for a mental health clinician, for example, in my case, sometimes burnout could look like lack of patience or irritability, or even when we're listening to other people's struggles, it hits you differently than when you are more taken care of. How would you say burnout could look like in your line of work?
Yeah, so honestly, I've experienced burnout myself. So, and it was hard. It comes up sneakily. I say that because for me personally, it's almost like I felt it, but I didn't know what it was. I felt like I was filling my calendar up with all these things to do, and I was making sure I was always out there and talking to whoever I could and making multiple phone calls and just trying to be in front of everybody while at the same time learning about my industry and everything that it offers and having to remember all of that knowledge. Like you just get exhausted. And personally, I just got to the point where I was so exhausted that by the time I realized it was burnout, I hit a wall. We ran into a problem. So it is sneakily, but it's almost like you feel detached from yourself. You feel just like depleted. You have no energy to give anymore. And and when you're in that state of mind, it's hard for you to then again help your clients. And they notice it. I personally feel like they notice it.
There's
Yeah.
like a really interesting parallel to that in fitness where people who are training really hard for a prolonged period of time often will encounter overtraining. And overtraining is really sneaky because you don't realize that you're overtraining until you're already in it. And once you're in the midst of it, no matter what you do, if your goal is to be stronger, for example, and you boost up your strength training regimen so that you can gain more strength, you'll actually experience the opposite where you'll get weaker and you're not recovering like you should, and just like it's this vicious cycle of like spiraling in the wrong direction, and the only way to really get out of it is to like take a step back and rest and recover. And I feel like burnout's kind of the same way. You don't even realize you're in the midst until
Mhm.
you're in it and spiraling.
Yeah. I feel like we
Yes.
almost set ourselves up for like a short-term performance, but then the long term is almost like you're creating damage for yourself. So to say that it's, part of the workplace, part of the job, I don't believe in that because once you get to the point of your burnout, that's nowhere near what your job and title entails. Like nowhere in my job title does it say you're going to experience burnout and you're going to feel this,
Yeah.
this, and this. So it's not doing anything for you to just say, oh, it's just part of the job, because I don't believe it is.
Also, do we owe that to any job? Right? I mean, with few exceptions, most of us aren't, leading a country or something, or, have lives on the line in the operating room. But I feel like it's an unspoken expectation of many corporate cultures that just,
But I do believe that we have a lot of work to do in that sense, because I do believe we live in a society that glorifies and how you say, like, almost gives you a prize if you put yourself last, and it's about productivity. I would never forget the very first job I got after graduating from college. It was in Washington, D.C., at a mental health clinic, and I was in charge of the intakes. That was my first job, is to do intakes and then see which therapist from the group was going to take the case, right? And I remember our boss in almost every meeting, he would say, it's about, we need to raise the numbers. We need to have more clients. We need to be doing more intakes. We need to, you know, be full. Your schedule should be full with clients because they will bill per client to whoever they were billing at that time, and that was the money that was coming in. There was never a conversation, and please keep in mind this is a bunch of therapists in a mental health clinic, and I don't remember, I worked there for 6 years, I don't remember one conversation about How are you? Are you taking care of yourself? I remember this feels like the McDonald's of therapy, right? It was like one client after the other, and the more we see, the better, and forget about everything else. It was about numbers and money. And I knew that was it. I felt it in my body. This is really bad. We haven't talked about quality of services. We haven't talked about us being okay to provide good services. No, it was about money. So I can imagine that happening in many other fields, that the last conversation is, how are you doing? Are you okay? What do you need? You know?
Hey guys, it's Tara here, and if you're feeling like a burnt out piece of toast, I've got my second quarter Relax and Renew, the Hour of Progressive Relaxation class coming up on May 6th at 7 p.m. at the Collective in Annapolis. There's no sweating, no squats, just deep breaths, soft vibes, and maybe a blanket burrito. Your nervous system will thank you, so grab your spot today. That's actually something that I love about my job is like my first question is like, how's your body feeling every day? And most of the time people are like, oh, my body feels fine, or it's like the usual. But then people usually launch into like, but has this been a week or what? Like I hear that mental health component a lot. And I love it because I just think that like we're not asking those questions enough. And like, are your families asking those questions? Are your friends, your employers? Like, I just don't think it's talked about enough.
But like, how do
Mhm.
you feel when somebody says that to you? You're like, oh my gosh, thank God somebody else feels that way. Like, thank God I am not the
Yeah.
only one who feels like I'm drowning or whatever the case is. That's how I feel.
Mhm.
Totally.
Yeah. Talking about burnout again, Tanner, you were sharing your own experience, and I appreciate that because that's another conversation that maybe we don't talk much about because we want to hide that maybe we have experienced burnout, and maybe we even have that belief that if we have experienced burnout, maybe we're not emotionally strong. And I have experienced burnout myself as well. And in my case, I felt like it was like I was like grieving something that I didn't know what it was. Now years later, I realized I was grieving my own self. I was grieving the motivated and happy Maria that was enjoying what she was doing. This is right during COVID, working on an ER, and we had shifts that we have to be there, and it was like chaos all over and crisis, as we all know. And I remember seeing the big signs outside of the hospital that I used to work at that said, heroes work here, right? And I remember seeing that they were everywhere at the entrance, like the community brought those signs and they were bringing food to all the hospital workers and first responders, which, hey, I appreciate very much. But at that time, I remember driving in one day, possibly, with my pale face, barely feeling that I could walk or had any energy left in me to go do my job the best I could do. And I remember seeing those signs and thinking, is this really helpful or is it a lot of pressure? What does being a hero means? That we are leaving our houses and working, countless shifts of long hours to help people in crisis while we're in crisis too. What if one day I can't wake up and I can come, and calling off was like a big bad thing to do because we were in crisis, and how dare you would take time for yourself. I remember they were even asking people with COVID to come into work. True story. So I was like, wow, I actually felt, to be honest with you, ladies, abandoned and not supported because I needed to give everything I had to help with this crisis, forgetting any of my needs and how I was also a human being with her own emotional struggles and feeling completely burnout. So, all that long thing to say, burnout is real. And watch it because it can, if not kill you, really bring you down.
Also, it's not productive. I don't know where that came into play, but it's almost like people are like, if you're burned out, that just means you're working really hard. And it's like, yeah, you're working really hard, but again, you're damaging you're just the insides. You're the way you show up on the outside. You're just damaging your whole entire system of how you do your job, to be honest.
And just like the lack of sustainability, none of us get into the industry, whatever industry, to work for 6 months really hard or 2 years really hard and then retire. I
Right.
mean, I wish we could do that, but it usually doesn't work out like that, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to have longevity in your career, like you have to protect your health. You have to protect your body. Like if you work on your feet, you have to protect your feet, your mental wellness. Like Maria, the great point of like the hospital caused worse mental health during COVID. Like that's crazy. So I just think like nobody's going to prioritize ourselves for us. So, it's up to us.
You can't lose
Yeah.
yourself.
Tanner, if you're willing to share, would you share with our listeners some of how you realized you were experiencing burnout and then how you recovered from that?
Yeah, sure. And zero judgment. So I honestly, I started to notice that something was off when I was crying more during the workday than I wasn't. And I am an emotional person, but like, I mean, I was just crying often type of thing. And it was like I was waking up and instead of me going to work and being happy or me going to work and being excited to do the tasks for the day, it turned into stuff I needed to check off my checklist. And even doing that, it's a terrible feeling. And like you will know internally that something is off and wrong. And it can be scary sometimes. It's like if you're in the depths of it, how do you get yourself out of it type of thing? And for the longest time, it, to kind of back up, I think I was in a burnout phase for like 6 months, easily 6 months type of thing. So it wasn't like a week and then I was back kind of, no, it was like a 6 month period where I was like waking up daily and just it was like, do I do this job anymore? How I don't feel helpful to people anymore because I feel sad, worked, just exhausted on the inside personally. And honestly, I just had to take a step back. I had to take a break. I had to literally journal out, what I'm doing in a day, how I'm spending my time. Do I need to take a break during that time period type of thing? And in the industry that I work in, people are working constantly. Like, and I'm sure there are so many other loan officers who are burned out. They're never going to say that they're burned out, or they might not come to terms with it. And that's something that they, will deal with. But it's not a good place to be in. And I really do think your clients kind of see it type of thing. So I had to like dig really deep. I had to do journaling. I mean, I even went as far as to like go on social media and try to find, different posts from, I don't know, the influencers that I follow type of thing that kind of helped me get through certain things and piece together the thoughts I was having in my head or how I felt inside. And once I started to realize that it made sense and I almost validated myself, I was able to open up an avenue to kind of get better. So taking breaks, definitely, again, validating yourself, asking for support around you. It got to the point where I was like, people noticed, but I really did have to say, hey, I am like really struggling and I don't really know how to even get myself out of this. Can you please help me type of thing? And I found that worked. So you can get out of it.
And Tanner, you bring a good point that I want to make, make this clear of the concept or the definitions burnout. You mentioned 6 months, and this is important because sometimes people use the word burnout for a weekend that they feel tired, and that's not what burnout is. When we talk about burnout, is that state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, right? That is usually caused by prolonged stress, right? Typically it could come from work or life demanding responsibility. So it's just more than being tired. It's really a chronic condition. It's something that has been accumulating over time. We maybe didn't see it, didn't pay attention to it, and then it comes the moment where when it's the crumbling of our health in many aspects of it. How being tired, on the other hand, is temporary, right? It could actually go away with rest or recovery or something. Burnout is something else. So I like that you mentioned that. In my case, like with you, it was also going deeper. In my case, it helped to start therapy. I went through therapy through my burnout, and that really helped. And then find activities that I enjoyed, like pay attention to do more of those. And my boundaries was a huge one when I was feeling burnout, was to start saying no. And even I was like, you can fire me. It's fine. I know this, not everybody has this possibility, but I felt so bad that I'm like, I'm just going to reduce my shifts. I'm going to start doing less until I recover. It's the same as having like a broken foot, right? Like you're not going to go out and run. You need to pause and drive less because it was on your right foot, and you have to walk less. Well, same with burnout, but we don't see it like that. It is a condition like any other, and taking care of it is important if we don't want to, make it worse. So yes, and yes, and yes to all that.
Yeah, setting the boundaries was hard for me because again, I'm a very emotional person sometimes, and it's like I don't want to say no to people. Like I don't want people to feel like they can't come to me for something or whatever the case is, but setting boundaries was definitely something hard for me. And it still is to this day. I mean, it's not a comfortable thing for people, you know?
Yeah,
So
but
Tanner,
I'm sorry, so needed because it's how you teach people how to deal with you and how not to, absorb your energy and leave you in a state more prevalent to burnout in a way. Go ahead, Tara. I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna ask, like, we know the financial industry isn't really known for prioritizing rest, recovery, self-care, none of that. And aside from setting boundaries, like, what have you done to change your relationship with work? Like, is there
That's a good
anything
question.
you've put into place?
You know, yes. So like during the day, instead of coming to work, and sometimes I have the opportunity to work from home. So this is easier if I'm working from home, but I'm also the type of person that I can't work from home all the time because I'm not going to get stuff done. I have a dog and all that. So when I'm at work and if I feel like I'm having a day or I just need a minute, like I'll go walk the parking lot or there's trails up the way. I'll have a pair of sneakers in my car. I'll go walk the trail for a little bit. If I have an errand to run, I'll go do that. So I do leave and I kind of just like regroup and I can come back and I can evaluate how I feel then. And sometimes I do have to just leave for the day and just kind of go home and just recoup. You know, my job isn't necessarily a 9 to 5, like I am in the office for certain hours, but yeah, I mean, I like doing stuff like that. Being in nature is huge. I know that's kind of like people say that all the time. It's like an oversaturated to go into nature, but it really works. Like I like to paddleboard, I like to hike, I walk my dog. Nature changes a lot, like a lot. So,
Mm-hmm.
I love that too. Such a nature person.
yeah.
There's science behind it also. I mean, it does help you complete the stress cycle in your body.
Hmm.
Is definitely one of my favorite ways to do that. But so much of what you've echoed or what you've said kind of echoes for me a lot of what I teach when I do workshops on stress management for the workplace, and how you said like you can feel it when you're experiencing burnout. You can also feel it in your body when you complete the stress cycle. Like it's not a choice, it's a physiological shift. And helping people recognize both the signs of burnout and then the signs of like when your body has moved through stress successfully is really helpful.
Totally agree.
And sometimes in burnout, it's hard to complete that stress cycle because you're stuck in the alertness, your nervous system being really active, and that's why you're so exhausted because we didn't have the opportunity to close those cycles. Somebody was saying, I don't know who that was, how important it is to close those cycles many, many times during the day. It's not just at the end of the day before you go to bed. Is that walk in the parking lot that closes a stress cycle, and then another one later on because you went and hugged a tree, whatever contact with nature is for you. But ladies, before we end this episode and give Tanner the opportunity also to share about her podcast that she has, I have one question for the four of us to answer. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Nobody knows this question.
Suddenly I'm
So,
nervous.
Don't start with
me
me.
too. Okay, Elizabeth, let's close that stress cycle. Take a deep breath. Breathe.
Laughter,
There's
that
no-
is a way to close the stress cycle.
You can even close it a little bit so you're in a better position to answer my question.
Okay.
Okay. So, what would you tell your younger self or a new professional in your field about mental health or emotional health and success? Do you need me to repeat that question, ladies? Okay, Elizabeth, since you're so sure of yourself, go first.
What
What
made
would you,
you think I was so sure of myself?
I don't know, I
I said
saw it
I
in your eye.
understood the question. I didn't say I had an answer.
I saw it in your face of confidence. Go, girl, you got
Okay,
this.
so what would I tell my younger self and how do I define success? That was what it was.
Yeah, what would you tell your younger self or a new professional in your field about mental health and success?
Okay, so two things on the mental health thing. The first one would be if you're not incorporating or at least aware of mental health and how it fits into nutrition and helping people, make changes to their eating, then you're probably leaving something really important out of the conversation to be aware of. And I think the second thing I would say is that your own mental health as a provider matters. I feel like I'm pouring into my clients when I'm working with them, but I can't do that if my cup is not at least, largely full and I'm tending to myself. And then what was the second one? So, apparently I did need you to repeat the question. Busted.
I don't think there's a second one. Is yes, what would you tell yourself about mental health and success? This,
Oh, success.
yeah.
Okay, well, if it's all the same question, then there you go.
I guess with this question, I try to find, yeah, that correlation of mental health and success. Sometimes we think that success can come without mental health, and I personally don't think that's possible. Now,
I
you
have
can
a
have
good
mental
answer
health
for
without
this.
success. Okay,
Oh,
I'm
Tara.
listening.
Well, I think it's a good answer.
Step
I don't
up to
know.
the plate, man.
The ball's going out there, way in the outfield. So when I think of like what I would tell a new trainer, in my industry, like success really isn't about your certifications or your client results or how many sessions you book. It's like about taking care of you and your boundaries and your sense of self so that you can continue to help others. Like this job is really emotionally draining, but it's also super fulfilling. So I really think that you have to kind of like prioritize your own mental health as a trainer because you're dealing with other people's hard stuff. You're dealing with body image, motivation, traumas. There's a lot that can go into it. I really think that personal trainers should probably have like mental health training of some sort. We do not, but we should. So in thinking like what I would tell a new trainer, I would say you're not a failure for feeling overwhelmed. You don't have to hustle yourself into exhaustion just to prove that you belong here. You are allowed to rest, recharge, and say no. And your mental health is just as important as your clients. So if you are starting an industry like that and you just tell yourself those things, I really think that that would be helpful. You can be a good trainer and also be a work in progress.
I love all of
Wow,
that. It makes me think that I would also add, you get to define your own success, no matter what industry you're
Yes.
in, and kind of mirrors the work that I do with my clients. Is like you get to decide what success looks like for you. You don't have to take the version that's thrust upon you from the world at large.
Yes.
Like you get to lean into your own values and define that.
Honestly, that is like exactly, that was perfectly said, in my opinion, specifically for my industry too. It's because there's a million different ways people could go and get clients or realtors or whatever to like, and I don't have to conform to just one way. You have to figure out what way works for you, type of thing. So I totally resonate with that.
So that's your
What
answer,
about you,
Tim?
Maria?
Oh, that's not my answer, but I resonate.
That's your final answer, Tanner?
No, honestly, I would tell my younger self that like just be especially when you're starting off, like be present in the job, be present in the job, be present in what you're learning, who you're meeting with, the people around you. Stop worrying about what it's going to look like in the future. Stop worrying about what happens last month when you were, getting licensed, whatever the case was. Be present in it because I think that's like a measurement tool for your success. Because if you don't start off with a good mental health, typically you're going to form habits and some of them might be bad. And the longer that you get into your industry, like it's harder to change them. So if you start at the beginning and you start with a fresh slate and you care about your mental health and how you're going to come across to your clientele, that is, I think, game changing. But that's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Good answer. So for me, I think I would tell my younger self or a new therapist that I think success is about quality of life. It's about the life that you create for yourself. And that includes your career, but it also includes many other things. And I know we love to help others, otherwise, we wouldn't come into this profession. But it's also important to prioritize our own well being, like we all have said. And I would add to not be afraid to ask for help. I wish I would ask for help sooner in my career and in my life. And this idea that I had to do it all, or I had to suck it up by myself, or I had to, I don't know, is asking for help and knowing that you don't have to fix anything or anyone. We're just here to offer support after we give support to ourselves, because like I always say, everybody else's needs are very important, but so are mine. So I will keep repeating myself that. What is that, Tanner?
I wanted to add, because I don't think we mentioned this, it's so important to also celebrate your wins as well. And that's all I'm gonna say.
Yes.
You know what that looks like? I struggle with that. Just celebrate your wins.
Yeah. So to end this episode, I'm going to celebrate your wins, Tanner, or what I see. More than celebrate, I'm going to acknowledge and give you a few seconds of appreciation. Thank you for being so open-minded and pleasant. Is that a word? Pleasant, yes. For when we met at that networking event, you came straight to talk to me, and we talked, and we went from, hi, my name is this, to deep into what we did and what we think about life. And I love those kind of people, right? We went straight into being vulnerable and real and authentic. And then another thing I want to appreciate is your authenticity and your love for what you do. It really transpires that you love what you do, and it's coming from a place of wanting to help, and not only help people with a loan or finalizing that buying of the house, but doing it in a way that it's that it feels okay. And I appreciate that. Then I went to your podcast, and it was such a nice time, because you are so, I know this might sound weird, but you're so human. Like, we're all human, but hopefully that makes sense, right? Like, it's that, yeah, you're so authentic. So thank you for saying yes. Please share with people about your podcast so they can go take a listen as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on here. I really do. My podcast is called Peak Your Interest Podcast, and we do have a YouTube page. It is a fairly new YouTube page, so I'll have to get the information for that. But we will, again, be on Spotify as well. That's a new for us as well. So I don't have an episode on there yet, but I'll be sure to get you some information. So if anybody's interested, we're just sharing financial stuff that I wish that I kind of knew growing up. So it truly is just to be helpful to people. I don't get paid to do it. I'm just trying to be helpful.
It's a great title.
Well,
Yes,
Yeah,
I love
thank you.
that.
yes.
Appreciate that.
And we'll put the information in the show notes. So thank you very much. Hopefully you found this conversation helpful about burnout and things we can do to fight that. And if you find yourself in a situation right now that you feel you're in the midst or in the beginning or at the end of burnout, please ask for help. It is possible to feel better. And not only is possible, it's important. You deserve it. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a like, a download, a comment, a review, a phone call, a follow on Instagram, a call to a friend to listen to the episode, a call to a coworker to listen to the episode. Maybe you have your
Pigeon
boss.
carrier.
Yes, carrier. I don't
Smoke
know.
signals.
Yes, all that counts. And even have your boss and coworkers listen to this episode. And maybe we need to talk more about how to start a better well-being culture in these workplaces to support each other. Thank you for listening, and until next time. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.